In this lesson, you are going to be determining the difference between part-whole bar modeling and comparison bar modeling. Here's the first one. There were 129 witches and 86 ninjas in the Halloween parade. How many more witches than ninjas were in the parade? On this one, I'd like you to pause the video and then read it again. And I don't want you to solve the problem. I just would like you to decide whether it is a part-whole or comparison problem. On your paper, write PW if you believe it is a part-whole, and C if it's a comparison. Now, read the problem back to yourself one more time before deciding. You can pause the video and read now. Okay, well, in this problem you should have chosen that it was a comparison problem. We were comparing the number of witches to the number of ninjas in the Halloween parade. The clue in this problem was how many more witches than ninjas were in the parade. Now don't solve this problem. Let's go on to the next one and see if you can determine if it is a part-whole problem or comparison. The Lake County Captains played 122 games this season. The Indians played 171 games. How many games were played altogether? Again, I'm going to ask you to reread the question and decide whether this is a part-whole or comparison problem. On your paper, PW for part-whole and C for comparison. Don't solve the problem. Well, how'd you do? On this one, I hope you chose part-whole. It's a part-whole problem because we have the captain's part, the 122 games, and the Indians' part, the 171 games, and we are asked to find the whole, or how many games were played altogether. Again, don't solve the problem. Let's go on to the next one. The fish store has 207 goldfish in the aquarium. There are 49 fewer angelfish. How many angelfish are in the aquarium? This time I'm going to ask you to do two things. Again, you're going to stop the video, reread the problem, and decide if it's a part-whole or comparison. Then set up the bar model, but don't take time to solve the problem. Just set up your bar model, and then I'll be right back. Pause the video now. Okay, well, you should have chosen comparison, and here's why. The fish store has 207 goldfish in the aquarium. So when you drew your bars, the first bar would look like this, and this would represent the goldfish. So my G for goldfish and my 207. The next bit of information I have is that there were 49 fewer angelfish, which means the bar should not be as long as the goldfish bar. In fact, it should be 49 fewer. So you could put a minus 49 in that bar. Now again, we're not going to take time to solve the problem. We're going to move right on to the next problem. Park School has 472 students. If 225 of the students are boys, how many are girls? Pause the video, reread the question, and decide if this is a part-whole or comparison problem. Did you say that it is a part-whole? If you did, I'd like you to pause the video now and set up the problem. Again, don't solve the problem, just make the bar model. Alright, so you paused the video, and this was the part whole problem, which means my bars are going to touch. Everybody's getting along. Nobody's bragging. We have the whole. The whole amount of students at the school is 472. We know that a part of the students are boys. That's the 225. And what we don't know is the part that is girls. We're not going to solve it, but if I were to solve it, my number sentence would be 472 minus 225. Let's move on. Sandy collected 293 shells on the beach. 142 of the shells were broken. How many shells were not broken? This time, I'd like you to go ahead and pause the video and decide whether it is a part whole or comparison, and draw the bar model that you would use to represent it. Once again, don't solve the problem. Pause the video now. I hope you were able to determine that this is another part whole problem. So, the bars will touch, and we know the number of shells collected was 293. We know that some of those shells were broken. I'll put a B for broken, 142. And the part that I don't know are the shells that were not broken. Did you set up your bar model correctly? Hopefully you got time for one more. Mrs. Winton graded 275 tests this weekend. She graded 25 fewer than Mrs. Sanford. How many tests did Mrs. Sanford grade? Again, stop the video, reread the problem, and decide whether you believe it's a part whole or comparison bar model. Then draw the bar model to represent the problem. Don't worry about solving the problem. You should have recognized that this is a comparison problem. Okay, Mrs. Winton graded papers and Mrs. Sanford graded papers. What we know is that Mrs. Winton graded 275 test papers. Now Mrs. Sanford must have graded more because the problem said that she, meaning Mrs. Winton, graded 25 fewer, which tells me that Mrs. Sanford did 25 more than Mrs. Winton. I hope you were able to determine which of the problems today were part whole and which were comparison bar models.